Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mondays at 3 Masterclass with Celia Keenan-Bolger. I'm Taylor Williams. I'm the casting director at New York Theater Workshop. We're broadcasting this class from Zoom and simultaneously live streaming on Facebook Live. We're so happy to have you all with us today. This masterclass and all of the workshop's virtual programming is offered free and available to the entire NYTW community. If you are in the position to support our work, we hope you will consider donating. You'll find a link to donate in the chat if you're joining us on Zoom, and in the comments if you're tuning into Facebook Live. This class will last around 45 minutes or so. For the first 30 minutes or so, Celia will talk and we'll open it up to questions and answers. If you have a technical or logistical question about the platform, please share via the Q&A tab vis-a-vis Zoom or comment vis-a-vis Facebook. When we get to the Q&A portion, feel free to share your questions for the panelists via the same mechanism. We'll do our best to get to all the questions that we can in the time that we have. If you're on Zoom, please use the upvote feature in the Q&A tab if you see someone else has asked a question that you are also interested in. And if you're on Facebook, please hit the like button if you see someone else has asked a question that you're also interested in. I'm so thrilled today to introduce Tony Award-winning artist and activist Celia Keenan-Bolger. Whether you saw her in her award-winning turn as Scout in Broadway's To Kill a Mockingbird, or as Molly in New York Theater Workshop's production of Peter and the Starcatcher, or any number of amazing productions, you know she is one of the great actors we have, and we are so lucky to have her here today. So please, Celia, if you would join our screens.
Yeah.
Hi. Well, I'll let you get to it and just
I feel like I'm
let me know if you need
me. Okay, sounds good. Oh, you guys, hi friends. Oh boy, how are we doing? So Taylor reached out and was like, would you like to do this masterclass? And I was like, I would love to do it. I care about New York Theater Workshop so much. I feel like connecting with people right now feels really important. And I was like, what does one talk about as an actor in a master class in the middle of a global pandemic? And I was like, well, I bet I could come up with some things. And so I had done this this lecture at Vassar in February. And I was like, I'll just sort of go back to that and I will use that as sort of like a foundation, and I can sort of speak about the things that I spoke about there and just my experience in the business and as an actor. And I went back last week and I was reading it and I was like, none of this matters. Who cares? I don't care about any of this. And I gave this lecture like 2 months ago. And at the time it felt like this very vulnerable and sort of open version of myself. And so I was like, well, what then do I talk about if I don't have this document that I felt like I could sort of fall back on? And I think what I'm realizing is that I use being an actor to process so much of what happens in my life, and particularly the hard parts. And I process it through character and on stage. I think a lot of the times without even really realizing it, but that one of the best parts of being an actor is that you're sort of holding on to things or going through experiences, and then suddenly you're in the middle of a scene or somewhere and you feel like, oh, I'm like in touch with something that in my normal day I'm not really thinking about. But also I'm processing things. I mean, I feel like this past year doing To Kill a Mockingbird for a year, and the experience of seeing the same people over and over and over again and just being like, how are you doing? How are we doing? What's going on? And just processing the day is such a huge part of being an actor. And that in this moment, that thing, this processing has been sort of taken away from me. And I thought, well, maybe we could do that. I don't really know exactly what it's going to look like, but what I'm really interested in I want to hear sort of what your questions are about being an actor, but I don't feel right now like I have that much to offer in terms of like tips and ideas, because I just feel like we are in a moment that is obviously not unlike any other moment. And I don't believe that our creative selves need to be shut down, or that we, say, once this is over, we can sort of re-engage with that. But I personally feel so creatively uninspired that when I was trying to think of things that I could talk about, I was just like, I don't care enough about that to, I think, make a compelling or interesting talk with you guys. And so I will depend on you to ask the questions about acting and technique or process. And I will try to take care of the part which is processing the moment that we are in, which I think is one of the great things that being an actor has given me. And so I thought I would just sort of talk about what I've experienced thus far in the last month. Really, like from an actor's perspective, that actually, before we do that, I was talking to Maria Dizia. You guys know Maria Dizia, the genius Maria Dizia. And she was like, she's going to be teaching an acting class online also. And she was like, I wish there was a way to bring all of us, like all 150 of us, into the room together. And she was like, I wish we could like make one of those rainstorms that you would do like in preschool, where everybody would be like doing this gym jam. And I was like, I also want that, because I feel like this thing, which is that as actors and as artists, like we are constantly like wanting to have that transference of energy, whether it's between two actors, whether it's between actors and an audience. And so I'm just going to do the most basic, getting us all together, breathing 5 breaths, in on 6, out on 8. But as we're doing it, I'm just going to say, like, can we try to connect with each other, even though we're on a computer? So I'm just going to do that 5 breaths, and we're just going to go in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Again. Last one. Okay. So just in the last 4 weeks, something that has really come up for me as an actor is how much I think I love my job, and how much of my identity is wrapped up in being an actor. And I think if you had told me, like, at the beginning of March, like, you're not going to get to do your job, and you're going to spend every day, all day, with your 5-year-old, I think I would have cried a million tears. And then I would have told you that I was actually like incapable of doing that, that work so defines who I am, and that my relationship to motherhood is so ever evolving, but also complicated, and that I was like, I can't do it. And what I have been amazed by is how I think because no one else is working, I have not had that feeling of like, I have not missed work as much as I thought I would. That's one. But that so much of my relationship to work has to do with being able to tell people what I'm working on. That like being out in the world and people saying like, you know, what's coming up for you, that is part of the neuroses of what I'm processing as an actor of like, I have to get the next job. What am I doing that's like exciting to talk about? What am I doing that makes me feel good? And now, because I don't have anybody that's asking what I'm up to, and because I know that nobody else is working, my relationship to work is so different. And that has just been something that I'm like, I wonder if that will be able to be carried beyond this time. Probably not, but I am interested in just sort of naming it. And then the other part that I sort of feel like I want to talk about, which is like what I was sort of saying before, which is around motherhood, which is different than, and maybe not relevant for a lot of you, but that I think this time, when I first had a baby, I felt like you would like sleep train them and then everything would sort of fall apart, and they would like start crawling and you were like, oh, okay, we've like figured this thing out. And then it would all go away. And I have had a similar experience inside of this quarantine experience that like, you're like, oh, okay, today is a good day. I feel all right. I can like do what's in front of me. And then the next day is just like total shit. And being able to, I think one of the things that we're told from the very beginning of being an actor, which is like staying present and really knowing like, okay, what does that even mean? Does that mean listening? Does that mean actively listening? Does that mean just being and letting things flow through you? And I'm not sure I have the answer to any of those, but I do think one thing about being present is just understanding that things are constantly changing. And I've had a bunch of moments of despair where I've had a hard day with my son or my husband or myself. And I'm like, well, you better get used to it because this is forever. And I think inside of a process of like building something in a rehearsal or when you are in a long run of a show, that feeling, which is like, I guess this is how it's always going to be. This is like so hard. I can't figure it out. I feel terrible about myself. And it's like, if you just give it a little bit of time, it's gonna change without you doing anything. And I think sometimes you can do something and that helps it along. And sometimes you can do something and it makes it worse, or, you know, however number of ways that can go. But that this business of trying to, I remember at the beginning of To Kill a Mockingbird, Benga Akinabe, who played Tom Robinson, had never done a long run before. And he was like, what is it like? And I was like, it's so hard. I don't like it very much. And he was like, oh, great. Thank you for that advice. And I was like, no, it's just that doing it over and over and over again is so hard. And I think there is something inside of this experience, which is just like, why is today different than any other? And yet I wake up on a lot of days feeling different from other days. But that, and what he ended up saying is, he was like, when we were talking about it a little bit more, he was like, oh, it kind of sounds like yoga. It sounds like you just have to show up and be present. And I was like, yeah, that's actually a great analogy, because like on some days you come to the mat and you're like, I feel strong. I feel like these poses are like coming so easily, and I'm breathing and I'm like in my body and I'm like with my people and we're doing it. And there are some days where you're like, I am not feeling this. I am in my head. I'm just going to be in child's pose for half the class. I am punishing myself because this person over here seems like they are killing this class. And that if we can go back to the thing, which is that, like, you know, the poses, and now you just have to be present, that I think really helped me in the run of To Kill a Mockingbird. And I think similarly inside of this experience, which is just like, you just have to show up. You just have to, like, maybe get out of your PJs, or get out of, maybe some days not. I've been trying to get out of my PJs because I had a couple days where I wore them all day. And guys, it didn't make me feel that good. And that you just have a few things that you're like, what can I do today? And today is not going to be like yesterday. And if yesterday was a great day and I try to emulate it tomorrow, it might not work in the exact same way that I feel like I would have a great experience as Scout Finch. And I was like, now I've cracked this scene. Now I know what to do. And then I would try to revisit it. And I was like, it's gone. I don't know what to do now. And instead of chasing it, I think just staying open and saying, like, I'm just going to try to keep showing up and being present. So there's that. The other part that I think is worth talking about, that has been a big part of my quarantine experience, that is sort of linked to an experience that was earlier in my career, which was when I was doing musicals. Like, I started as a musical theater actress. I studied musical theater at the University of Michigan, and everything I did for, I think, probably the first 9 years, 10 years that I was in the city was all musicals. And when I was doing Spelling Bee, I did it for a year and a half. And then I went right into Les Mis right after that. And so I was essentially doing like 8 shows a week for 2 years. And my voice, my singing voice, started to become such a burden and such a point of stress in my life that I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think I might have to, like, find a new career, because singing 8 times a week is making me feel crazy. And also, I just don't know if I can do it. And I, like, looked ahead in my life and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm supposed to do this for the rest of my life. Like, how is this going to happen? And so, in an effort to, like, take a step back, it also happened to be 2008, where, so I guess it wasn't quite 10 years, it was 8 years into me living in the city. It was also the year that Barack Obama was running for president. And I was like, maybe I'll just move to Pennsylvania and go work for him. And that will give me a moment to, like, recalibrate and see, like, maybe I'll just go into politics. Maybe I will stop being an actor and I'll be a field organizer. So I went to this meeting in New York City at the at, like, a trade union on 14th Street, and it was called Camp Obama. And they broke us up into all of these groups. They, like, gave us all these tools about how to organize and how to teach people how to canvas, and then they broke us up into groups. There were, like, probably 500 people there. Maybe not that many, maybe like 250. And they broke us up into groups and they said, okay, tell the story of how you ended up here. Like, just tell your story. Talk about whatever you want with this group. So in this group of 5 people, we were none of us the same. Different socioeconomic backgrounds, different racial backgrounds, different careers. And we just sat around and talked about where we came from and how we ended up at this trade union wanting to work for Barack Obama. And it was, hearing stories, hearing other people's stories was so moving and so activating for me. So that was a really special moment. I got sent to Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. You guys know Plymouth Meeting. I was like, where the fuck is that? Which is sort of outside of Philly. And I went to the office and was like, hey, I'm here to, like, be your field organizer. And they were like, okay, great, get on the phone and here's the script, and you're just calling Democrats to see, like, who thinks that they'll vote for Obama. And I was like, I am not really good on the phone. Like, is there some paperwork to be filed, or maybe like something to organize in the office? And they were like, no, get on the phone. And it was like not very fun, but ultimately I was able to kind of get the confidence to do it. And I was like, yo, I am an actor. Like I can pick up a telephone and talk to somebody and have a script and not make it sound like I'm talking from a script. And I worked there for like I was there for 2 months, but after like 3 weeks, Emmett, the main field organizer, was like, okay, there's a bus coming from New York City and there are 100 volunteers that you need to organize to canvas, to like go out and knock on doors. And so they all show up and I was like, okay, so this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna have a buddy, you're gonna have a clipboard, you're gonna have these papers, you're gonna knock on doors and you're gonna try to engage people and see how willing they'll be able, how willing they are to vote for Obama in November. And immediately somebody was like, I'm not really good at knocking on doors. Like I was more interested in like paperwork or organizing. And I was like, I see you, no. And then I like flashed back to that meeting in New York City. And I was like, you know what? This is me. I'm an actor in New York City. I grew up in Detroit with lefty parents who dragged me to a lot of protests. I care about this election a lot. And I just like told my story. And something happened in the room where everybody went from being like, I can't do this. And I was like, knock on the doors and tell your story. That's it. Tell those people why you've come from New York City to Pennsylvania to try to convince them to vote for somebody. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this business of being an artist and this business of being an activist or trying to engage people on a political or social level, they are not so dissimilar, because I think as an actor, so much of what we do is walk into, I like think of those first days of rehearsal where like you've like done the read through and they're like, okay, now we're gonna get up on our feet. And you're like, I would rather be dead. You're like, have your script and you're like, okay, maybe I'll like walk over here. And you're just constantly coming up with ideas and failing and then doing it all over again. And I feel like a lot of professions have failure as a part of them, but they aren't quite as public as what we do as actors. And that our abilities to communicate and to extend not just empathy, but understanding beyond ourselves give us a special set of tools that help us engage with the world around us. And so in this time when I've been like, I don't feel like I don't feel like an actor right now. The thing that I have been able to do was like call my friend Gideon Glick, whose husband is a doctor. And I was like, can we like send food to Perry's hospital or something? And he was like, the hospital where Perry works is pretty well resourced and actually not overrun with patients. But he has a good friend who works at Bellevue and her hospital is overwhelmed and has much fewer resources. And I was able to sort of put together this thing with Gideon, which is called Broadway Feeds Bellevue. And that has ended up being my purpose. And I think the question we have to ask ourselves right now is like, what can I do? Like, what do I care about? And like, this can change day to day. And it can be a creative thing or it can be not a creative thing. But what do I care about? And then what can I do about it? And it doesn't have to be big or small. And I think what's also so interesting about this time is I was like, actors are so used to unemployment that like when I've done master classes in the past, people are always like, so like, tell me what like a normal day looks like for you when you're not working. And I'm always like, I would rather be dead than answer this question because I just don't know. And it's different depending on the day. And at this time that we are living in right now, I'm like, it's hard to know what's like the difference between quarantine and like depressed unemployment as an actor. But I think what I am learning in this time is like, oh, okay, we can set up a life for ourselves that is not based on like what a bunch of other people are doing and how that makes us feel inside of it or how insufficient we can feel. Because I think the other amazing part of this is that because none of us are doing anything, the sort of compare and despair element of it all is taken out of the equation, and the energy comes back to us, and like, then what do I want to do? And that is both like really overwhelming and also extremely exhilarating and liberating. And it's just like, okay, what do we do with that? And so my answer has kind of been to try to be an activist during this time. And I'm sure like at a certain point I'll be able to come up with other things, but that, I think having a purpose is so important. And however that shows up, and if that purpose is that you like check in with a friend every day, that's good. That's enough. If it's that it's time to like read those plays that you have always been like meaning to get around to, it can be that. Like, there's no judgment about how we use this time. And I would say that that could even extend beyond this moment. There's also, I don't know if people have read this letter that George Saunders wrote to he teaches writing, graduate writing at Syracuse, and he wrote a piece in the New Yorker, but also to his students about an artist's job during this time. And really what he said was that it's just an artist's work to keep a record, because it's not really, we don't need to process it now. We don't need to make a play about quarantine. We just need to have our eyes and our ears open so that when the time comes, we will have a story to tell about this time, because stories give plagues context. They give our lives context. And in 50 years, people are going to have a hard time believing what we are going through right now. And I think actors and writers and artists, there is no one better to sort of keep a record of like what the day looks like, what the people around you are doing, how the people around you are processing it, so that you have stories that you can share with the world when we come out on the other side of this. Okay. I think that's the bulk of what I have to say right now. And I'm gonna bring Taylor back in and maybe answer some questions. I'm happy to either answer questions like from the chat, or also if people want to raise a hand and talk to me, I would be so happy to hear someone's voice. However that goes.
Why don't, if anybody has a question that they'd like to ask live, if you can use the raise your hand feature, I will. Here we go. We have our first person. So bear with me in case I do this wrong. Okay, Brian.
Hey guys.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
I put this in the chat, but hearing you talk, I actually think it would be even better that I get to ask you in person. So looking back kind of on your training and then on where your career has taken you, where do you look back now and you say, wow, like that's where there was a big shift for me? Are there any like big 2 or 3 moments that you can pinpoint and have some reflection on that?
Yeah. I think the one that I always go to first is when I was like 3 years out of school and I was cast in The Light and the Piazza. And I, in fact, auditioned for that show at New York Theater Workshop in the rehearsal room with Craig Lucas. And I had been a longtime fan of Adam Guettel and Craig Lucas. I was like, this musical seems so special. I was cast in it. I got to go to Seattle. No, first I went to Sundance, where we workshopped it, where there were like no lyrics to any of the songs, or like maybe 2 of the songs. Adam was like writing as we went, and we built this like little musical, this beautiful musical, and everyone was like, that thing is so special. And I was like, I agree. And then I went to Seattle and did, the world premiere there. And then we went to Chicago and did it at the Goodman. And it was announced that it was coming to Broadway. In that time, between Seattle and Chicago, I was offered 2 Broadway shows, which were both jukebox musicals. And I was like, I think I want to be in this musical that I care about in a regional theater. And then maybe eventually it will come to Broadway and I'll get to make my Broadway debut there. And so I didn't take those jobs. I went to Chicago. I had this incredible experience with this cast, with these artists. I think I felt like I was part of something really special. And I felt like, I was like, people are going to think that I'm hot shit. Like I am in an Adam Guettel musical. Like this is very exciting. And I got back from Chicago and my agent called me and was like, so you have to audition. You need to go to Lincoln Center and audition for the show. And I was like, I've like done it 3 times. I'm not really sure what I'm gonna show them that I haven't already, but I was like, I can do it. And I like got to the audition. There were all of these women there that I knew. And they were like, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I'm just like Lincoln Center has to sort of sign off on me. And so, you know, I'm just coming in to do that. And I auditioned and didn't hear anything. And then Bart Shear, who had directed the show in Chicago, asked if I would come to the Intiman Theater where he was the artistic director and if I would do Our Town with him. And this was all just sort of like in between waiting to find out what was going to happen. And one day while we were in Seattle, he was like, let's go for a drive. We like got in his Subaru and he was like, you're not going to be in the Light in the Piazza on Broadway. And I was like, and he was like, it's, you know, we're going to make great things together and we're going to have a long artistic life together. But this is not going to happen. And more than anything, and this sort of like circles back to what I was talking about before, which is like the thing I felt more than anything was embarrassment, that I was like, I am going to be the person who is known as the girl that got fired from the Light in the Piazza. And like, is anybody going to want to work with me? Is everybody going to be talking about why I got fired? Like it was I felt so embarrassed and sad that I wasn't going to get to do this thing that I thought I was going to get to do. And also I had become so close with so many people in the cast, Kelly O'Hara included, who was taking the part that I had auditioned for. And I felt like, okay, this is what it's going to be. If you decide to be an actor, it is going to be this expression of total commitment and giving all of yourself that you have. And then at any moment on someone else's like terms, it can be taken away. Are you up for that? And I feel like of all the things, and I think the fact that it happened so early in my career was really helpful because it set me up in a way that I was like, I know what I'm getting myself into. And what is so crazy about that whole story is that I had done a show at Second Stage with Michael John LaCusa with Jesse Tyler Ferguson, and he had been working on a show about a spelling bee, and he called me and he was like, you know, they're like looking for someone else to be in the spelling bee show. And at the time I was like, well, I'm going to be in the Adam Guettel musical, so I'm not really available. And then I was available. And I ended up, Spelling Bee was created by this woman, Rebecca Feldman, who brought like her friends together, created this improv show. And then Bill Finn was brought on, and then James Lapine was brought on. But she created the entire thing. And she played the part that I ended up playing on Broadway. So essentially, I went from the Light in the Piazza. Because she was not really a singer, Bill Finn was like, I want somebody who can sing. So I went in, and this thing that she had created, I then took her role, and she was sort of delegated to the side. And I wanted to be like, I know that you don't know, you think I don't know what you're going through, but I kind of do. And I'm really sorry that this is happening. And I think that sort of release of control, it reminds me of this thing that a professor of mine said in college, which is the key to success is the graceful execution of plan B. And I think that that thing has served me so many times, and that so often as an artist, things do not go the way that we expect them to. And they don't turn out how we thought they would. And being able to control the thing that we have control over, because there's so much that we don't have control over, is a lesson that I continue to take with me through my life. That was a long answer.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Wow, thank you for sharing that story, Celia. That was great for me to hear. Okay, let's take another question. This is Steve. Hi, Steve. Steve, can you hear us?
You're unmuted, but somehow we can't hear you.
All right. Steve, we're going to come back to you. I'm going to chat you and try and figure that out. But in the meantime, here is Nick.
Hi, guys. Thanks for doing this. I have a question about keeping your kind of like unique artistic voice while also still staying like savvy to what's going on in the world and in the industry. And I was just wondering how you might navigate something like that, just like retaining what makes you special and what you love to do.
I think that that is so much harder now maybe than it was when I started out, because of social media and because I hear younger people talk about their brand and about just how they're making sure that they're not only you know, like expressing themselves creatively, but like how are they business savvy. What I can say for myself is that I don't know if I realized it, but at starting almost right out of college, I was very aware of who in the industry, who was who in the industry. Like that I knew a lot about the people that were working. I knew the directors, I knew the actors that I admired the most, I knew the writers that I admired the most. And so I was always trying to get into a room with people I admired. And that's like, I mean, the Adam Gettle thing is a perfect example, and Craig Lucas, where I was just like, I knew those guys, I knew their body of work, and I just felt like anything I can do with them will make me better. And to this day, that's how I function. That it's, people are always like, what's your dream role? And I'm like, I don't really have a dream role. I have like a list of people in my head that I want to work with. And I think because theater is such a collaborative effort that, and because especially right out of college, I didn't have that much experience and I didn't go to grad school, the way I learned was by watching artists that I admired. And I would just say, even if you're not an actor, even if you're like an associate to a director, or you are, you know, you reach out to somebody and you say, can I observe a rehearsal? But just trying to get in the rooms with people that you admire, that has ended up both serving me personally and getting me in situations that that I felt proud of, but also from an industry standpoint, I've been able to have a career that I feel like the industry is like, that's a good career. And I think like maybe in a way I don't know, I had never been on Broadway. I don't really know who I thought I was, being like, I'm going to do this regional job instead of these Broadway shows. And I didn't really have any money, or I don't come from money. So it wasn't like I could depend on outside forces, but that I was like, I just believe that this will work out. And the truth is it didn't work out, but then it did work out in the long run. And so I think you have to really clarify for yourself what is important, and the rest will follow. That trying to stay true to yourself artistically, are there things that I've been a part of that I was like, oh, that didn't turn out the way I thought it would. Yes. But especially when you're young, I just think working is so helpful and creating opportunities. I remember like after I graduated from college, my friends and I would do like a play reading every week. We would like read a play. And then once a month, we would do a musical where we would like rent a rehearsal space and someone would play the piano and everybody would have a part. And it just made us feel like we were engaging because nobody else was calling us to do anything. And it made us feel like artists. So I'm not always that good. I feel like I'm such an interpreter. I'm not really a creator. I'm not always good at being like, well, then I'm just going to write myself a web series like that. I'm not great at. But I think you just have to be clear about the kind of career that you want to have and the kind of artist you want to be, and write those people down that you want to work with and figure out how to connect with them.
Thanks, Celia. I appreciate that. And thanks, Taylor.
Okay, so I heard from Steve, and Steve's question for you was if after this you would ever see yourself going back to play Scout. And that opens up even a larger question, I think, of, are there any roles that you would ever want to revisit? Or as an actor, do you feel like, especially after a year on Broadway, do you feel a certain amount of closure with a particular role?
I mean, I think Scout, I feel like that part was so, like, we were just like a character and a soul that met each other, and that doesn't always happen. So I do think it would be hard. The thing about revisiting something is I'm like, I would do it in a heartbeat if it was all of the original people that I did it with in the first place. Doing it with a whole new group of people and like rebuilding it again, that feels less fun just because we worked so hard initially to build it. And then I'm like, I already put that work in. To do that all over again would feel like hard. That being said, and maybe it's because I just was talking about it, I would love to play Emily in Our Town again. I feel like that and maybe it's also because these times feel like that play has a special resonance, and trying to think about like what kind of art do we make after we come out of this, that play feels like it would be helpful for all of us that got to work on it and all of us who would get to see it. And I would like to do that again.
Yeah, that's great. I've been rereading Our Town too. It's a perfect play for this moment.
It is.
We have a few more live questions if you're game. Yeah, great.
Please.
All right. Evelyn, welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
I just have one super quick question and then one that's not a super quick question. But what was the name of the article that you mentioned that you said keep a record?
Yes, it's George Saunders' letter to his students. And it's in the New Yorker. I think it's like the April 4th issue. I also would highly recommend, there's a podcast that Cheryl Strayed, who wrote the book Wild and Tiny Beautiful Things, called Sugar Calling, where she's calling like elder statesmen. And because she was like, I think it's easy to feel like this is unprecedented and like this is so crazy what's happening right now. And she was like, people who are over 60 and older have experienced some really hard things. And so they have a perspective on this that we don't. And her first call is to George Saunders. Her second call is to Margaret Atwood. And her third call I have not listened to. But the George Saunders phone call is like unbelievably helpful and illuminating, which is where I first heard about this letter to his students.
Amazing, thank you. And my second question is just, I've had casting directors and agents tell me that to just focus on the work, on your craft, and work will find you. How much do you believe in doing that, or how much should you balance it out with strategy and workshops and networking?
Well, I think if you just focus on the work in your home, it's going to be hard for anybody to find you. And I think but that when the time comes, you want to feel like if the opportunity comes to you, or if you do get cast, that you're like, I got this, I can do this, to the degree that any actor is capable of feeling that way. But that you have put in the time and that you have put in the work so that when you are called upon to do it, you're not going to be in just abject terror the whole time. So I do think the work component is so important. However, I think it's hard to know about like what even networking means. I think if you don't have an agent and going to open calls is the way that you learn about how you exist in a rehearsal room or in an audition room. You got to do it. I did it. I never got cast from an open call. I hated them, but I learned a lot. And that, I think, taking class, especially if you've gone to university, you get a sort of sense of who you are, like the institution that you graduated from sort of defines you, and that taking class once you've graduated gives you a different perspective on what kind of artist you are. And I think that helps with networking. So I think it's a little bit of both. I do think more attention should be put on the work, because also the work is what feeds you. That's the thing that like keeps replenishing the well, whereas like networking does not replenish the well. But that you do have to have a strategy, and that's different for everybody. And I feel like, you know, I would do like 2 months of open calls, and then I was like, and now I have to take a month off because I feel tired and like sad. And so you just keep modulating your strategy.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Okay, we have a question from New York Theater Workshop's own Jeremy Blocker. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Celia.
Hi.
Oh no. Hold on. Little technical difficulty.
There he is.
Sorry, Jeremy, we lost you, but you should be back now.
I was just saying that I think it was a slip of the hand for me to raise the hand, but I did just want to say thank you for doing this, Celia. We really appreciate it. You've been wonderful.
God, no, come on. My pleasure. Truly. It feels so nice just to be like an exchange of ideas. I feel like we're all craving that right now.
For sure, for sure.
Great. Okay, bye, Jeremy. We have a question from Scout.
Jean-Louise Finch.
Let's see. Scout, I'm going to come back to you. In the meantime, here is Jack. Okay.
My question was, I mean, for those of us who have the part luxury to stay inside at this time, when there's kind of no obligation. In fact, there's an obligation to kind of not be a body in the world. What are you doing right now to stay embodied as an actor and kind of keep yourself sane as like a person with relationship to space and the things around you when there's really no social obligation to do that?
I mean, that's a really good question. And I would say that I'm not doing great at it. That so much of my energy right now is because I have a kid that trying to sort of, I think one of the hardest things for me becoming a mother was my loss of independence, which is like a sort of collective experience that we're all having right now, or that I guess we have like infinite independence, but only to a certain point. Like we can only do so much. And so inside of this time, as far as like being an actor in space, like inside of this home that I'm renting upstate, I'm not doing anything. I don't feel like particularly in my body. I feel like I'm eating a lot of snacks. I'm not like really taking care of myself in the way that I usually do when I'm on a job or when I know that something is coming up, I am making sure that I get outside every day, and that that I'm outside. And because I'm upstate, it's a little bit easier for everybody who is in the city, which I know is a different situation. But just even figuring out like I know this sounds, I feel like if I heard this, I would be like, but just like stretching your body, moving your body, standing up once every hour, that kind of stuff. Like, and I do think getting outside is so paramount, and like breathing the air and like looking at the picture that is larger than the four walls that I'm used to sort of staring at all day long. I don't know that I have a really good answer for this question, because I feel like this is one of the places where I would actually say that I'm not really doing that great of a job. And that so much of my my life as an actor when I'm in the city is that I'm never home. Like, I like being out of my apartment. I like moving around a lot. I like seeing friends. And when all of that is removed, maybe in a month I will have a better answer. But for the moment, it's like, I just take it day to day. I do a bit in the driveway with my son, which he calls training, where we race to the stop sign. And that's one thing that I do every day. But obviously that's not possible for a lot of people that are living inside the city and trying to take care of the rest of our community by staying inside.
Thank you. That's so heartening to hear. Appreciate it.
Okay. Scout's question was about self-soothing in this moment, which I think you sort of just covered, and how you're getting outside and taking things day by day.
Mm-hmm. And I think connecting with friends, like I do feel like checking in with people is so helpful, and like seeing faces is so helpful, that I really have I have found a lot of solace in that. I have like a date with my siblings at 8 p.m. every night, and we have never in our lives talked this frequently. And it is like something I look forward to, even on the shittiest day where you're just like, this day was a wash, but at least I have that thing that I can talk about how bad the day was at the end of it. And I found like, and I do think the purpose, like having Broadway Feeds Bellevue has been, I had so much anxiety for so long. And I read something recently that was like, the greatest way to soothe one's anxiety is to focus on others. And I think that is really true in this moment. Like if we do have the privilege to not be an essential worker and to stay home, it's like, what can we do? And it can be so small. If it's like writing letters to people in a hospital and saying thank you, if it's starting a meal train and having food delivered, if it's like giving $5 to a food pantry, like just something that makes us feel like we have a little bit of a purpose, and that we're looking beyond our own sort of bored lives right now.
That's really great. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more question. We're approaching the hour mark, so we'll do one more live question. Okay. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, what's up, Celia? Yeah, this is exciting. Thank you so much. I will speak on behalf of everyone when I say, like, this has just been so nice to have really candid time extending beyond the walls. And thank you also, Taylor, for facilitating. Anyway, I had a lot of questions, but I wanted to kind of take this back to what you spoke about early, which is kind of, this idea of relating your life as an artist. You say like you carry that with you so much in your identity as an actor. And when you're not acting, or when you're not working, or when you're not, in the rehearsal room, kind of how do you sort of stay grounded, I guess, in terms of in your other roles as a daughter, a mother, a wife, and what, I guess I did have another question, which was kind of in addition to that, which was about sort of this idea of validation, which, I mean, like you were, I think, really fortunate to not have so much of the social media pressure in your early career, but but kind of coming into this as, can you keep the pressure of having to answer that question? That really rung so true with me when you said the pressure and stress of not working comes from having to pretend like you have something going on, or to manifest something, or to exaggerate something. Anyway, the question, I guess, to distill it down would be like, what works for you in terms of making balance, finding a balance?
I think a huge part of that for me, and this has been like over time, is that I have a group of people that I really depend on, who I feel like, I think when I first moved to the city, everybody is just sort of trying to figure out who they are and where they are in their careers, and that there were just people that I would hang out with that for whatever reason, when I would leave it, I was like, I feel bad. I don't feel good about myself. And I couldn't even really locate what they did. Like, they didn't say anything hurtful or they didn't do anything. But when I left the conversation, I was like, I feel bad about my career. I feel bad about myself. I feel fat. I feel whatever. And that I was like, if that's how you leave a situation, probably it's not a relationship that you need to hold on to. And that now, as a 42-year-old woman, my base of friends, like the people that I depend on when I am winning a Tony Award, that I can say how excited I am about that and not feel like I need to sort of dim my light because some of them aren't working, or some of them, aren't even actors and don't really give a shit. But also that I can complain and say, like, I'm having a really hard time, and that is what grounds me and keeps me feeling like I'm gonna be okay, because I have this incredible community of people. And I think that is different than a lot of likes on social media. And I think right now I'm watching, and it's like, I feel like Amy Poehler says, good for you, not for me. That I feel like right now is the time when we should be investing in secure attachments, which means like that we are checking in with the people that we love. This goes for unemployment. This goes for any time, beyond quarantine, that it's like, how are we creating bonds with people that will carry us through the ups and downs? Because there are going to be so many ups and downs. And that the sort of the social media part of it, which is like performing the ups and downs and then getting feedback and lots of likes or comments, is different than a secure attachment. And that, to me right now, it feels like that sort of social media world is superficial and is never going to make you feel the way that you need to feel. Whereas a community of people who love you and who you take care of and they take care of you, you can continue to return to them. And that is the thing when I'm not working, or when I'm having a really hard time inside of a job, or when I'm having a really hard time inside of motherhood, that's where I go. Those are my people. And that's what keeps me feeling like I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That actually was the answer I needed. I'm going to get on a call with my therapist in minutes.
Also therapy.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Celia. We have, there's so many questions and we got to a
If
big
you want to do a couple of the chat questions, I'm totally available. I don't want people to be like, I'm done here. So whatever,
we do have one question from Facebook that I'd love to ask you.
yeah.
This person talked about how earlier you mentioned your son and your husband and your relationship to motherhood, and what was or is it like to enter into the unknown territory of making a family while also making your life as an artist?
Oh, I really appreciate that question. Also because it is really a work in progress. And I feel like so much, like I feel like the generation before me fought so hard for me to be in the position that I am in, which is essentially that I have it all. And that I feel like if you had shown me my life now when I was in college, where I like have a career and I have a husband and I have a family, I would be like, your life is amazing. And I think I can sort of look at it and say, it is. And yet I am struggling so much inside of it. And I think a lot of that I've had to navigate has come from feeling that by having it all, I actually am deficient in all parts of it. That like when I'm home with my family, I am either like bored playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or exhausted. And when I am at work, I am longing to be with my son and to be like with him and having a walk or snuggling or whatever. And that it just, I think trying to sort of get used to the fact that the days where I could give my all to something might be over, but that what I have to give is enough. And I'm still like, that's going to be life's work, I think. And what's been really interesting about this time is that I think I have been so like, I think a lot of women when I was pregnant were like, oh my God, having a baby is the greatest thing that can ever happen because you don't care as much about your career. You have so much perspective. Like you just stop caring as much. And I'm going to tell you, I still care as much, if not more than I did before. I still love being an actor. Like I did not have that feeling. And I missed being an actor so much in the first year of my child's life. And I was like, wait a minute. So you're going to tell me like, I had a baby to try to like make my world bigger. And in fact, the thing that it has done is clarified how much I like being an actor. Like what kind of monster am I? But I think I've now just been able to say, okay, that's who I am. And I think before this whole quarantine situation, I was just like, look, in my heart, I am an actor and like, I will do the best that I can as a mother. And what I've been so moved by is how much I've not only enjoyed motherhood, and I think because there was just no pressure that I'm not like looking again around at all the other moms and being like, well, they're doing this and they love it and they're thriving. I feel like we're all just like, this is hard. And that somehow that feeling and just doing my best and understanding like the day can have very little structure and that's okay has been so that's like really good information. I think what will be interesting is like, can I try to bring some of that into life once we get back to work?
Yeah, that's great. I think that's the perfect question to end on.
All right.
Celia, thank you so much.
Pleasure. I'm so happy I got to do this with you guys.
It was so great. Everybody who's watching, I put a link to the meal train, Broadway Feels Bellevue, in the chat if you want to support. And before you all virtually disappear, I want to just tell you about some upcoming programming. Let's see, in terms of master classes, next week on Monday, April 27th, we have director Liliana Blaine Cruz and designer Adam Rigg on collaboration. The following week, Monday, May 4th, we have a cabaret workshop with Dito Van Riegersberg and Dito's cabaret alter ego, Martha Graham Cracker. We have some fireside chats coming up on Wednesdays. This Wednesday, April 22nd, join us for a chat with the Sanctuary City team. This Friday, April 24th, join us with our Director of Education for a Teaching Theater online class. And next Wednesday, the 29th, a conversation with composers Martha Redbone and Aaron Whitby. This masterclass and all of the workshop's virtual programming is offered free and available to the entire NYTW community. All artists who contribute to these online gatherings are compensated, and we are continuing to pay our staff. If you are in the position to support our work with a gift of $25, $10, or $5, or any amount, please consider donating. Your gift will help us continue our work through this crisis and beyond. If you're joining us on Zoom, you'll see a link to a short survey after the event. Please share your thoughts with us, and you'll find the link to donate if you choose to do so at the end of the survey. If you're tuning in on Facebook, you'll find this link in the comments. And you can also make a contribution online at nytw.org, where you can find our complete schedule of online programming. And thank you again, Celia. This was an amazing chat, and I feel so restored just listening to you and breathing with you.
Good, good. I'm so happy to do it.
Okay, thank you so much, and bye, everybody.
Stay safe.
See you all soon.